everybody. I'd like to go ahead and call to order the Nevada Commission for the Reconstruction of the V&T Railway. It's Wednesday, November 29th, 2023. It is 9 o'clock in the morning, and we are here at the Carson City Community Center Robert Bob Kroll Boardroom. Could I get a roll call, please, Sherry?
Here?
Oh, will you push your button? Yep,
Sorry.
perfect.
Leah Cruz,
Present.
Clay Mitchell,
I'm here.
David Peterson,
Present.
Michelle Schmitter. Here.
Great, we have all five of us. With that, we will go ahead and move on to item 3, Pledge of Allegiance. If everybody could please stand. Thank you. Thank you, everybody. With that, we'll go ahead and move on to agenda item 4, public comment. Anybody want to make public comment at this time? Okay, seeing no takers, we'll move on to agenda item 5 for possible action, approval of the minutes of the October 25th, 2023 meeting. You have the minutes in your packet. Any edits or changes that anybody wants to see? Okay, anybody want to make a motion on this item?
I will. I move to approve the minutes of October 25th, 2023.
Thank you for that motion, Stephanie. Do I have a second?
This is Clay. I'll second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Thank you very much. Okay, let's move on to agenda item number 6. For possible action, discussion and possible action regarding the V&T Commission's Statement of Accounts Payable Checks paid October 1 to 31, 2023. So we have $293,894.44 in accounts payable checks for the month of October. Are there any questions on this one? I don't know, Leah, if you want to add anything or not, but. Okay. Anybody want to make a motion on this one?
I move to approve the checks paid October 1st through 31st, 2023.
Thank you for that motion, Leah. Do I have a second?
I second.
Thank you, Stephanie. We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Great, motion carries unanimously. Thank you. Let's move on to agenda item 7. Possible action, discussion, and possible action regarding the adjusted V&T Commission's fiscal year 2023-2024 budget reports for the period ending October 31st, 2023. So in your packet, you have a comparative statement of adjusted revenue totaling $197,110.14, with expenses totaling $431,199.07. Any questions on this item? I know, Sherry, we're working on the revenue, getting the reconciliation for all the PEX stuff. So
Yes.
I think probably for the January meeting, this will look significantly different, right?
Yes.
You'll have probably $1 million worth of the BEX revenue show up at that point, once we get this all figured out on the back end. So just wanted to point that out for the record. Go ahead.
And
Go
David,
ahead.
just for clarification, it also doesn't show the payment from Mr. Street yet, right? Correct?
Yes.
Okay.
That for sure is correct. Yeah, since that just happened on the 13th, which I was going to address later. But yes, you're correct. Yes, it does not include that either.
Mr. Chairman, I just have one question.
Yeah.
The amount under interlocal support is not a number that I'm familiar with. Does it represent a portion of support, or is it a combination of under revenue? It's in the revenue category 33512.
Yeah, so Clay, that's the money that we actually transferred to help with the repaving of the parking lot. So from my board, Carson City Culture and Tourism Authority Board of Directors, we transferred $150,000 out from like the dollars that were accumulating while the bond was being paid off. So that's what that amount was for, since we needed sort of that seed money
Boost,
to actually, make the first payments to SNC. So yes,
Perfect.
That's exactly what that is.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, Any other questions on the comparative statement? Anybody want to make a motion on this one?
I move to approve E&T Commission's adjusted fiscal year 23-24 budget reports ending October 31st, 2023.
Thank you, Leah, for that motion. Do I have a second?
This is Clay, I'll second.
Great, we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Great, motion carries unanimously. All right, let's move on to agenda item 8. Discussion and possible action regarding the V&T Commission's fiscal 23 annual audit report and financial statements. So Suzanne is here, and I'll just let you take it away and let you present our financial statements and the audit for this past fiscal year, Suzanne. So yeah, and then just state your name for the record. And
Hi.
this is why they're all here today, Suzanne, by the way. That's why we got all 5.
It's all me.
It's all about the audit, yep.
For the record, my name is Suzanne Olson. I'm with Casey Nealon, and I'm presenting the fiscal year 2023 financial statements for the Nevada Commission for the Reconstruction of the V&T Railway. I'm going to start by prefacing this with, you guys received a draft that had not been complianced yet, so there were some grammatical formatting type changes that did get made upon compliance. And additionally, David had some questions that were posed after the draft was issued. So we'll go over those changes that were implemented since you received your draft as we're going through this
Yep.
presentation.
And I meant to say too that this was posted as late material as well to the
Yes.
website. So just for the record, yeah.
So we're going to start on page 21 of the printed document. So if you're looking at the printed document, it would be page 21. I think it would be page 23 of the PDF. So this is the required communications with governance letter that we present at the end of every audit. And I'm just going to highlight the important matters related to this letter. So the significant audit matters that were identified. Management is responsible for the selection and use of appropriate accounting policies. The significant accounting policies used by the commission specifically are described in note 1 to the financial statements. GASB statement number 96, which is the subscription-based information technology agreement, GASB, that was just implemented or became effective for this fiscal year. That was implemented, but it did not pertain to the commission. So it is a new accounting standard that was taken into consideration, but there were no changes that were needed or documented for the audit. We noted no transactions entered into by the commission during the year for which there's a lack of authoritative guidance or consensus, and there were no other changes to your accounting policies during the year or for this fiscal year. And then all significant transactions have been recognized in the financial statements in the proper period. Additionally, the commission has a significant accounting estimate that we take into consideration when we're performing the audit. And this is over receivables that are collectible at year end. We do look at what was received subsequent to year end to determine what that accounts receivable should be. And we evaluate the key factors and assumptions used to develop the estimate of collectability and determining that it is reasonable in relation to the financial statements taken as a whole. The financial statement disclosures are presented in a neutral, consistent, and clear fashion. We did not encounter any difficulties this year in the performance of our audit. It was I think this is our third year presenting the audit, and it's gotten better and better each year. So it was definitely, we didn't encounter any difficulties with Allison's transition either. So it was very, not thinking of the right word, but it was a pleasure to work with you guys this year as well. There were some corrected misstatements that we provided to Jennifer McCain. She has recorded those journal entries. Those are provided on page 22 and on page 22. And then on page 23, the disagreements with management, we did not have any disagreements with management. As I indicated, there was no issue at all this year. Management representations will be signed once the board approves of the audited financial statements, and we'll get the audit report issued before the December 1st filing deadline. We did not have to inquire of any third parties for any management consultations or other independent accountants or auditors to be able to perform the engagement, the audit engagement. And we do have a couple of audit findings that we'll discuss here in a little bit, but all of those were discussed during the normal course of our business or the normal course of our engagement. So there are no additional findings or issues that had to be discussed within this letter. We do present some required supplementary information. The statement of revenues, expenses, and changes in net position budget to actual schedule is provided in the audit report. That is a required supplementary schedule. We did not audit the required supplementary information, and we don't express an opinion on it, but if it is based off of information that was, the actual information that was audited is presented in that schedule. And then the restriction on use, this information is intended solely for the information and use of management and the commission's board of commissioners and is not intended to be and should not be used by anyone other than these specified parties. So those are the required communications related to this audit. Does anyone have any questions regarding the letter?
Any questions so far? Okay, no. Keep rolling.
So now we're going to go back to the beginning of the audit report, and we're going to go to the independent auditor's report on page 1. And what I'd like to address there is just that you guys had a clean audit opinion. It was an unqualified opinion, which is the highest form of assurance that we can provide on an audit report. I'm going to kind of go through the audit and just kind of discuss the changes that were made. I'm not going to discuss grammatical or formatting changes, so if you guys identified anything in your review that you would like to address with me, you can, and we can make sure that it did get corrected. If you will, we'll turn to page 6 of it's the management's discussion and analysis. If we look at the financial analysis of the commission's funds, that first sentence, it says, it should say enterprise fund operating revenue increased $245,888 from the prior year. This is just taking into consideration the change in the charges for services that were reported at the end of the fiscal year. So if you look at page 5 under the summary of revenue, expenses, and changes in net position, it is just taking into account the charges for services. Previously, that was taking into account the change in total revenue. So that was the change that was made there. And then if we go to page 13, note 4. So this is the notes receivable note. We added a sentence at the end to add some clarification. The sentence now reads, as of June 30th, 2023, the note receivable was in arrears 16 months. However, payment was received and the note receivable was brought current subsequent to year end. This is tying together the subsequent event footnote where we indicate that Mr. Street made that payment in November. So we will see that in just a minute. Now, if you turn to page 14, note 6. Do we have a question?
Do we want to deal with individual, or we want to wait till you're done and then
We
come-
can totally
come
deal
back
with it
through?
individually.
However you guys want to go, yeah.
I just wanted to ask about this because my recollection was the last payment that was made was February of 2023, which would not have put it at 16 months in arrears, but would have put it at 3 to 5 months in arrears.
That payment was made but it was made for an earlier, there were payments that were missing. So you did receive payments in 2023, late 2023, but that was paying for payments that were due much earlier in the year. So he didn't catch it up with those payments. He was just making a payment towards an already balance in arrears.
Interesting. Okay, I was under the impression that he brought it up current to that point.
Jeez.
That was my recollection of the conversation around that payment, and that, which was weird, he waits
Right.
months and months and then makes a payment, and then we don't hear anything for months again.
Clay may be right about that, Suzanne, because you're right. There was a weird point where he was almost like ahead of the
Right.
schedule, which I think was the February one, because he made a sizable payment. We might need to take a look at that just to,
So that could be it. We do have the amortization schedule. It could be that we said 16 months and that was taking into consideration when we had that conversation and created, do you know what I'm saying?
yes, because technically he shorted he shorted us on the first payment to start the loan.
We can go back
off,
and, we can go
so-
back and look at
okay.
that and potentially
Yes.
modify the 16.
Yeah.
Could be
The
more in
16.
line. Yeah.
So we're okay with what it says, but we need to verify
Fix
that
the
number.
months.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I don't have a big issue, especially if technically there was
Yeah.
irregularity, we'll put it that way, in the way that he was making the payments. I
Yeah.
just, that didn't match my recollection of
We can definitely-
what was actually happening at the time.
Yep.
We can definitely take a look at that.
Okay. Thank you, Clay.
Any other questions related to that change? Okay.
Michelle, did you have a question, Michelle? No, you're okay. 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 Okay.
On page 14, note 6, long-term lease revenue transactions. We made a change to that first paragraph. The second sentence to that first paragraph now reads, in April 2023, the commission entered into a new charter services agreement with the railroad for the lease and maintenance of locomotive number 18, effective March 2023, maturing March 2028. So I believe the draft indicated that it was an extension of the prior agreement, and so we changed the wording to identify that it indeed was a new agreement. Does anyone have any questions related to note 6? The change.
Yeah, I just
to
want to
note
make sure
6?
everybody's okay with just the progression of what happened with the inclusion of the fee schedules and the
Yep.
lease back on the 18 with Tom and team. So, okay.
Okay. And then on the subsequent event footnote on page 16, note 9, the second paragraph was, the last sentence of the second paragraph was elaborated. We indicated that the payment, it says on October 1st, 2023, the payments in arrears associated with the note receivable in note 4 were received on November 13th, 2023. So that's where we tie that earlier note to the subsequent events.
And
Does
for the
anyone-
record, that was when we received the funds via the wire transfer that Jennifer confirmed for us.
The one thing I didn't mention that was a little bit earlier, it does play into the required supplementary information, the budget to actual, but it also is presented on page 8 of the statement of revenues, expenses, and changes in net position. We have previously always reported merchandise net of cost in revenues. However, that causes some confusion when you are looking at the budget to actual, because the budget is not created to net those two numbers together. So we broke it out after we provided you with the financial statements and after Jennifer McCain's review. So now you'll see under revenues, it just says merchandise instead of merchandise net. And then the cost of the merchandise is reported in supplies and services under expenditures. So when you look at page 17, which is the budget to actual report, you'll see that the merchandise budget was $42,500. The actual sales were $60,293. Or actually, you're not going to see this on yours. It's on mine. And the difference, I think it was around $20,000 worth of difference between what I'm reporting and what you've got on your report is now reflected in supplies and services. So the new number for supplies and services is $186,612. And all that does It doesn't change your bottom line. It doesn't change your results. All that does is just make that budget to actual information. It clarifies it for the Department of Taxation and for when Jennifer's doing that budget work at the end of the year. for
Sure.
you guys.
And just to clarify, Suzanne, we're on our draft copy, the 158,471, that's what will now be 186,112?
186, 612.
Oh, 612, okay.
Yep.
612.
Mhm. And then the merchandise revenue at the top will be 60,293.
60,293. Is that all, that's all just the Polar Express though?
That's all just Polar Express
Perfect,
sales.
okay. Thank you.
Mhm.
Thank you.
Dave, I have a question.
Please, yeah, go ahead, Michelle.
So would it be cleaner just to have, I guess the question is, what else is in supplies and services? And would it be cleaner to have,
There's a,
s-
there's
say,
a,
merchandise?
there's a lot in supplies and services. And if you wanted that broken out in more detail, that would have to be a conversation that you have when you're doing your budgetary approval process.
Because I think this is important enough to track. I'm just thinking about museums I've worked at, and we
Sure.
track gifts,
Mhm.
museum store revenue, and even at the hospital, we track the auxiliary stuff.
So I know that the way that when we were doing our testing, we received a report from Jennifer that showed the categorization within the budget categories. So it's possible it this would be a very different looking report if we were to granularize that. I don't even know if that's a word. If we were to make that more detailed and show you the underlying expenses within the broader categories. But it is maybe a conversation that you can have when you're creating that budget to maybe detail this out a little bit more. I've seen it more detailed before.
But I guess the question is, I don't know what's in this. So if we have a sub-account under this that ties up to the merchandise,
We could do that. You would have a 2-page report at that point. And that's something that we can totally do for you or on a future looking report, if that is something that you want. But this report is created to mirror what was presented for your fiscal year 23 budget when you got it approved.
And if I can just jump in, Michelle, we did move in the direction to have the larger categories only because of the augmentation process where it was like, I felt like we had to do 50 different entries and we had all the different like supplies and services broken out into like 20 different GLs or categories, I guess, within. So this budget does reflect sort of the change, the direction that we went in as a commission for this fiscal year. So remember, this was last fiscal when we made the budget, but to try to create bigger buckets because it gave us some flexibility during the year without having to wait till June to then augment every single row, like to, literally shift the monies around in June. But we could certainly, maybe it's just a question of pulling the cost of the merchandise out. And if I understand maybe what you're saying is for next fiscal year's budget, maybe like under supplies and services, we just have merchandise. We still keep all the other elements of supplies and services in supplies and services. You just like to maybe see the cost of the merchandise here relative to the revenue that we're receiving and showing up top. Okay, would that be a huge, if we just pull that out, or does that create a nightmare for the audit?
No,
Okay.
that is a budgetary.
Okay.
That is something that you can totally work with
Okay.
Jennifer on. When she's, the fiscal year 24 budget, has it already been approved? It's already been approved, correct?
For this fiscal, I was thinking like as we build next fiscal, sorry, if I said 24, I meant we might be able to do it this way for fiscal 25. Because
Okay.
obviously we can't like retroactively go back and undo something that we already submitted to taxation. But I think Jennifer wants to say something too.
Okay.
Jennifer, do you want to add
Yes,
something? Sorry,
please,
go
if
ahead.
I can. This
Yeah,
is
go.
Jennifer McCain, your comptroller.
Yep.
You're all going in the right direction, that yes, the audit does need to match the budget. I'm going to confirm what Dave said. A couple years ago, it was decided to make a more general budget audit, more what taxation is interested in seeing. Every month you are given those financial reports. It breaks this down by the account line items. So as the year goes on, you are seeing what that merchandise line item was actually spent versus the revenue that the merchandise brings in. Unfortunately, this year, because our revenues are behind, we're not seeing the revenue. If you would like me to send everyone for the next meeting, once again, that end of year, June 30 financial report that I can print that gets it more granular, I'm happy to do that. I am against making these buckets so granular that we have no wiggle room between areas. And taxation really doesn't want to see so many buckets. They'd rather see them grouped together in a more general aspect. I don't know if that clarified anything, but I'm
No.
happy to
Yeah.
answer questions or provide you with any information.
Thank you, Jennifer. This is Michelle. I did see that on the account summary under the budget report, so I think that's enough for me. I just want to know what we have available to spend based on money that's been brought in.
Right. Yeah, and to Jennifer's point too, if we did break that out, say we put a budget of $30,000, well then that's basically what we would have for merchandise. But if costs went up and the shipping went up, well then we're in a predicament where we have to augment the budget then to account for the additional money. And so that was part of the reason we did go to the bigger buckets, just to give us some latitude, flexibility within. But if you're okay to keep it this way, and then we can spend more time on the budget side of it too, and as you see the detailed reports and ask any questions
Yes.
as we go along,
No,
I think that would help.
I'm good. Thank you.
Okay.
I understand completely.
Okay,
Thanks.
great. Thank you,
And
Michelle.
one other suggestion that I have is if you would like this highlighted, your management discussion is a great area to highlight anything that you would like to point out. Discussing what Polar Express actually made versus what you expected, or highlighting our merchandise revenue was X and our expenses, which gives us a net of Y. That one page is a great area to highlight those specifics.
Good point. Okay. Yeah, thank you, Jennifer.
So she's referring to the page 4, where it talks about financial highlights. We could definitely
Throw something in
throw
there.
something in there that would kind of paint a picture of the items that are important to the commission, so.
Okay.
I'm moving
Yeah,
forward
keep going,
on
yeah.
to page 18, which is the independent auditor's report on internal control over financial reporting and on compliance and other matters based on an audit of financial statements performed in accordance with government auditing standards. There was a duplicate paragraph that was removed. The paragraph that's remaining the last sentence identifies we identified certain deficiencies in internal control described in the accompanying schedule of findings and responses as items 2023-001 and 2023-002 that we consider to be material weaknesses. We're going to talk about those, which can be found on page 20. The first one is a financial reporting material weakness. It's a continuing finding. It was on the report last year. The criteria is that management is responsible for establishing and maintaining an effective system of internal control over financial reporting. One of the components of an effective system of internal control over financial reporting is the preparation of full disclosure financial statements that do not require adjustment as part of the audit process. So we are recording multiple journal entries in order to prepare the financial statements, and we're preparing the financial statements, which is a non-attest service. And so we have to be very careful in preparing Yellow Book audited financial statements so that we don't impair our own independence. So when we're having to book a lot of journal entries and we're preparing the financial statements, it's important that there's somebody within the commission or on the commission that has the skill, knowledge, and experience to be able to review these financial statements so that they are able to determine whether or not that they can approve all of the information that's being presented and are knowledgeable of that. So the recommendation here is that we recommend that the commission implement procedures to provide training in the preparation of governmental financial statements in accordance with generally accepted accounting principles, and have a commissioner on the commission with the skill, knowledge, and experience to be able to review and approve all journal entries. The view of responsible officials, I just have on here, the commission agrees with this finding. I think that's what we had on there last year. We can modify the views of responsible officials and make any adjustments or changes there if you would like before we finalize. Does anyone have any questions related to that finding?
Any questions? Go ahead, Michelle.
Is that a service you would provide?
I cannot provide that service
Okay.
because I have to remain independent in order to be able to perform the audit. What I have found is that smaller state and local governments, their responses indicate that they're willing to do some training to do that and get the knowledge and experience to make sure that we're not impairing our independence, that you guys have that on your board and can review those financial statements and those journal entries and approve them. But there's a cost benefit to whether or not you want to hire a CPA to come in and do this for you, or if it's something maybe you want to add to your, how you want to handle that. If it's because it either has to be at the commission level or it has to be at the contract level. So, but I will tell you that I think I only have one state and local government that actually provide me with full disclosure financial statements. So this is a common finding that we have, and our risk assessments are getting more and more stringent, and our peer review looks at what we're doing on an audit basis so that we're getting held accountable to make sure that we're putting those findings in here and notifying the boards when there's an issue with internal control. So
Is it something that could be done through Jennifer and her team and take, because I feel like, I think the way we got around this before was because we had Jim, who obviously was, ran the state's budgeting, and so we benefited from his experience, and he was a CPA, so, this was easy for him to do. And, we don't have a gym per se, right? None of us, I don't think any of us are CPAs or anything like that. So I'm just wondering could that be, because I'm worried about whether or not if one of us is taking that on, does that put us in a weird position because we're the commissioners, and I get we don't have staff, right? So it's not like we have an administrative services officer, who is handling all of the accounting, but is that possible, or does that create a conflict of interest since they're responsible for all of our accounting as it is, or does it have to be independent of?
it doesn't have to be independent of
Okay.
that. So if that is a role that you guys work out with Jennifer to handle,
Okay.
then and she's got the skill, knowledge, and experience
Exactly.
necessary, and she
Yeah.
understands the standards and the implementation of the standards and all of that, then definitely that
Yeah.
could be a role that she could fill.
Jennifer, not to put you on the spot, but just to think about, I mean, is that something you would be comfortable doing for us?
Sorry, I couldn't get off mute. This
Oh.
is
Leah, you jumped the gun, Leah.
We're breaking up. I can't hear you.
Yeah, I think that this is something we can definitely discuss, and if taxation requests us to write an explanation as to how we plan on implementing something to change this finding, then that would, we would definitely sit down and write that up.
Great.
The way we deem.
We could definitely change that view of responsible officials and identify that, yes, you agree with the finding, and that you're working on a plan to implement for the
Sure.
subsequent fiscal year.
Yeah.
Yep, that would be great.
Does
Okay.
that work? Okay. Yeah. Thank you, Jennifer. Okay. Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you.
All
Is there,
right.
I'm not
sorry, I
supposed
don't
to
want to.
get more work out of these meetings.
Yeah, no, well, it's about sharing the love, and workload.
Great way to put it. Thank you.
And I don't want to speak for everybody else. Is everybody else comfortable if we take that approach to this first one?
I'm comfortable with that. I'm
Okay.
just questioning this term view of responsible officials, given who's sitting up here. I mean, I don't, there's a big assumption in that title.
Do you want the letters IR before responsible? Cool.
The second finding has to do with the inventory count. Inventory for the commission is not necessarily a significantly material item, but it is, based on the sales, it did rise above what we, as the auditors, had calculated as a materiality threshold. And this year we ran into a situation where the inventory count was done, but the work paper was not reconciled or complete. So we had to find an alternative way to be able to test inventory. So this is where this finding came from. So the criteria is that management is responsible for establishing and maintaining an effective system of internal control over financial reporting. One of the key components of an effective system of internal control over financial reporting is oversight over account reconciliations and using reliable, correct, supporting evidence and calculations of balances. The condition is that it says, as auditors, we had to recalculate and reconcile inventory using purchases, sales, and gross profit percentages as the inventory account at June 30, 2023 was incomplete. So the issue is normally we would audit an inventory count reconciliation, and instead we actually had to calculate and reconcile, which is not a function of the audit, that's a function of your accounting department. So the cause is procedures have not been put in place to ensure that the count is complete and accurate at the end of the PEX season. And the effect is and I changed the effect. So this is the part that changed on this finding. So it now says the internal controls over inventory management are not operating effectively because we were able to test inventory. We just had to do it a different way. So the inventory balance is accurate, or we feel that it is accurate, materially accurate, based on the testing that we performed. And the comment that I had in there before for the effect indicated that possibly there was a problem with that balance, and that is not the case. That's why we made a change to the wording. And the recommendation is we recommend the commission implement procedures to ensure that the inventory count is complete, accurate, and reviewed by a person with the skill, knowledge, and experience. And again, I put the commission agrees with this finding. But I'm open to comment or recommend, or your stating a different view of responsible officials. Because I believe, David, we talked about this, but we didn't actually address a
I know about, what we want the actual outcome to be. And my question on this to Suzanne was, what were we missing in terms of the inventory count that was done by Atypical? It wasn't that we didn't account for, we have X number of globes left and X number of swords. It was the fact that there wasn't a valuation of those items tied to the account. Yeah, so all it was there's 5 of these, 10 of these, 12 of those left. But the value of the merchandise somehow wasn't carried forward, I guess.
So we weren't able to.
Yeah.
So you would take the dollar amount per item times item to get to the total, and then you would total that to be able to get to your inventory, and there wasn't enough data on the spreadsheet to be able to do that completely.
It was just the count of the items that were left over.
There were pieces. It's like it got started and it didn't get finished.
Yeah.
So,
Mr. Chairman,
Yeah.
I guess what I'm questioning is the accuracy of this cause.
Mhm.
Is the cause that we do not have a procedure in place, or is the cause that we were in a transition and didn't comply with the procedures that we have in place?
That's a good question.
if you have a procedure in place, it wasn't followed accurately. It wasn't completed. The process or the
March.
procedure wasn't completed. So I understand what
Yeah.
you're saying. So how would we have not, I could change that to say procedures were not completed at year end?
By year end, yeah.
By year end. Yeah, because it's like we had part of the process. It's like we had the counts, but for some reason, the values of the individual pieces of PEX merchandise, which is part of the procedure, yes.
Or we could say review procedures were not,
Followed or,
because I believe atypical does the count.
yep.
But is there a review process of that count before it comes to us for audit?
That I don't think we have that in place. So maybe that's something we need to be thinking about then. And, okay. And then I have a question, Clay, too, for Suzanne, and I'm just thinking for Sherry, or, maybe we get this corrected after we get through PEX this season, but what I was talking to Suzanne about a week or so ago was, is this all of the merchandise, right, that we've ever purchased, that we are responsible for the tracking of, even if we're, let's say, quote, writing some of it off because you're not allowed to sell it, after so many years, or are we just looking at this in the context of the merchandise that we purchased during the fiscal year for that fiscal year's PEX, or no? So it's
Whatever's left, whatever
Whatever's
hasn't
left.
been sold that's left that hasn't either been disposed of or quick sold or
Yeah.
Written off.
written off or
yeah.
whatever. So we,
Okay.
the first year that we came in, we actually did an inventory evaluation and went in and did a spot check on the
I
counts.
remember that. Yeah.
Based on the materiality of inventory, we didn't feel like we needed to do that every year. That's very cost preventative, right?
Yeah.
So
cost prohibitive.
we identified that the count was done, the count was accurate, so we didn't feel we needed to do that. When we did do that inventory observation, the count incorporates everything that you still have from
Okay.
whether or not it was a new purchase or an old purchase.
Yeah.
And we just adjust to whatever that inventory was at the end of the season. So those decisions of, are we writing this off? Are we giving it away? Those decisions of what happens to the inventory that's old is done by your management team.
Okay.
And we don't necessarily see that because we just get the end result. Does that
Gotcha.
make sense?
No, it does. But for us to then properly correct this moving forward, we would need to go back, if I'm understanding correctly, we need to go back and piece together everything that we have and what we actually paid for each of those pieces.
We had a clean inventory at fiscal year 22.
Okay, so we could start from,
So it would just be filling in the holes for
Okay.
fiscal year 23.
so everything that was purchased last year.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Clay, does that,
Yeah,
do
so
you want to change,
well, as I look at it, I'm still not convinced the way that the cause is written accurately reflects what the cause was. That being said, I think the recommendation is applicable regardless of what the cause was, because the recommendation is that we need to ensure that the count is complete, accurate, and reviewed.
Yeah.
And so that's really the policy that we would need to implement, is
Yeah.
some sort of a regular review, maybe as part of our budget.
Sure.
Close out before we're, going into the new fiscal year,
Yeah.
where we review an inventory report. We look at it, make sure that it's complete and
Agreed.
accurate as best we know, and
Yeah.
then off we go. So,
And should we add the words including value of goods in that recommendation? Since we have the count part, we just don't have the valuation of the individual pieces of merchandise?
We can add that. It's kind of in there when we're saying that it needs to be complete and accurate.
Okay,
That's what we mean when we say complete and accurate, but for transparency and clarity, if you want that broken out, we can definitely add that.
personally, I mean, I think we should, since we're obviously
Okay.
kind of missed this step or missed a column of information or something, I guess.
Dave, I have a
Yes,
question.
please, yeah, go ahead.
So, have you seen the spreadsheet and does it have the price, the purchase price? And are you saying
On some
that-
of them, there, it is provided, but not on all of them.
But at the last fiscal year end, everything was complete?
You buy new merchandise every year,
Mm-hmm.
so it would need to,
Yes,
Yes.
but we have one that worked,
Mhm.
and we just have to,
From 2 fiscal years ago,
Mhm.
yes. So I think,
we have one from fiscal year 21. We have one that we were able to
22.
use for fiscal year 22. It was fiscal year 23 that
Yeah.
we had a problem with.
right. So we're good through 22. Then we bought all the merchandise in 23. We had a count left over. I think that's the part we're missing the values for the merchandise that was purchased in fiscal 23,
Mhm.
which I think we can fix that. I would hope pretty easily, right?
Yeah.
We know what we purchased. We should be able to go back. Sherry, maybe we can work on that to go back and then identify the unit costs for each of those pieces of merchandise, and that would bring us up to speed, because otherwise we're going to compound the problem with what we just bought a month and a half ago or 2 months ago, right? So, but I think, yeah, we got to get 23 fixed, and then we can bring 24 into the mix. So
Yep.
maybe we start with that spreadsheet from 22 where we know it's correct, add 23, put the unit cost, boom, 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 for the counts, and go from there. Because so you're not questioning, again, just clarifying, the count is good. We just
We're assuming,
missed the unit cost, yeah.
we're definitely assuming the count is good because it's
Yeah.
been good in the past
Right,
2 fiscal years, but the fact that we couldn't get to where we needed to get for
Yeah.
a value, and we didn't actually do an inventory count,
right, this year.
observation this year,
Okay,
I mean, it's an assumption that the inventory account was
that's good.
good.
So, Mr. Chairman, I think what I would feel comfortable with is if we just add to the cause, we can leave it pretty much the way it is, but just say, to ensure that the account is complete, accurate, and properly reviewed
Yeah,
And properly
by the end of the
reviewed.
fiscal year, or as opposed to at the end of the PEX season.
yeah,
And
I think that's great.
Does that
I
work?
like that. Yeah, that does work.
Because then that guides us to the policy we need to put in place to fix it.
Yeah. No, well said.
All right, so I'm going to modify the cause to say, procedures have not been put in place to ensure that the count is complete and accurate and properly
Reviewed.
reviewed, I missed a word, reviewed at end or by end of fiscal year.
By the end of the fiscal year, yeah.
Yep. Okay.
Just throwing this out there, I think the reason that we tried to do this in March, though, was because of, and Candy, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I think we have to order, don't we have to put like the initial order in April or something like that? Yeah. Yeah, so I think that's probably why it was being done. And I mean, for the audit, yeah, for us, I still think we're okay, but it helps us to identify, oh, okay, we don't have the swords left over, but we have 50 million of these, so don't order a bunch of those. But I think for the purpose of internally having it for sure done by the end of the fiscal is good. I still think we should have an internal goal. Let's try to do our count in February or March or whatever before we order again through rail events and those guys. So okay, I like it.
We'll set a policy that works for us.
Yeah. Yep. Great.
Those were that. That was the sum of all of the changes between the draft and where we are currently. So it sounds like the only thing that we did not go through and get an answer to that we will need to find before we finalize is on note 4, the note receivable. We need to confirm the number of months arrears at 6/30.
Correct.
And so I will make that change
Yeah.
before we finalize
I think that's
If we can get
fair. Yeah.
this approved. Yep.
Yeah.
Does anyone else have any specific questions before we?
Any questions? Can I just ask one clarifying question? On page 9,
Yep.
on the statement of cash flows,
Yep.
where it says cash June 30, 2022, and then cash June 30, 2023.
Yep.
Would that be the equivalent of our reserves or our ending fund balance? Is my first question.
That is what you have available in your bank accounts at June 30, 2023.
Okay, so, okay,
Your
thank you.
unrestricted reserves is the unrestricted net position that's presented on page 7.
Okay, so this is, so the 786 and the 684 is the cash in the bank, so to speak, like what we have in our bank account technically. Okay, so is it fair to say though then that basically we ate into our reserves $101,000 in order to get us through last fiscal year?
So
not?
there is a component on this. In your financial statements, we're recording depreciation. So the answer to your question is yes. You have a
Okay.
net loss, so that is eating into your reserves.
Okay,
You're looking at the cash flow statement to ask me your question.
yeah, should I be looking at a different?
And the cash flow statement doesn't, it only reflects cash in and cash out. And there is a depreciation adjustment of $795,476 that is affecting your
Net position.
change in net position, or your net
Okay.
position, which is so when you look at, you're asking questions the question that you're asking impacts it two different ways, I
Okay.
guess is what I'm saying.
Okay.
So your cash flow, you had a negative, the net decrease in cash flow was $101,095. So you spent more money, actual money, than what you brought in by $101,095. Your reserve is your unrestricted net position of $545,305. And that number is triggered based on your net change in position, which is on page 8. And within that number, you do have a very large depreciation adjustment that's impacting that number.
Okay.
But I don't, so cash flow is different than the overall net position. If you back out the depreciation, our revenue was in excess of our expenses
Exactly.
by 100,000, whatever. It's just maybe that hadn't all hit the bank account, so to speak, or whatever at year's end.
And these financial statements are accrual-based financial statements. When you guys are working on budgetary information and when you're thinking about
Right.
money coming in and money going out, you're looking on a cash basis, not accrual basis. So you have to consider that when
Okay.
you're looking at these financial statements as well.
Okay. Yeah, the reason I was just trying to get an understanding of, like, what do we actually have in the bank, right? Because say something comes up or we get in a pickle this year, or we had to have $100,000 worth of repairs to the 18, we didn't budget for it. Where does that come from? What are we pulling that against? And so that's what I'm just trying to understand is, are we hypothetically pulling that against now that 684?
So
Or-
I think what's a better number to look at is the unrestricted.
Yep.
Okay.
Because some portion of that 684, we can't really
Can't
touch.
touch it? Okay.
Yep.
Or it's committed or something. And so
Okay.
that I just saw it, but
545,000.
545
Yeah.
is kind of our free or liquid cash, if you will.
Okay. And which, and the 545?
We're on page
seven.
7.
Okay,
Yeah.
7.
It's the bottom number. It's under net position. You
Uh-huh.
have, it's the unrestricted balance.
Okay. Thank you. Well, that was easy. My gosh. Does anybody have any other questions on the audit for Suzanne? Yeah, thank you, Suzanne, for taking the time to walk us through this. This is great. So good work. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Who wants to make or if there's not any further discussion, if anybody wants to attempt a motion on the audit report and financial statements for last fiscal, happy to entertain one. Michelle's smiling like she wanted to. And
Well,
then-
can I
then
ask,
she-
Mr. Reese, can I ask, is it sufficient for us on a motion to this just to reference the conversation that happened as far as changes go, or do we need to get specific on those?
If you believe that the discussion was clear on the record, then I don't believe you need to specify the individual details in your motion. You can simply say it's approved as discussed.
Very good.
You want to make it?
I'm of the opinion, unqualified, of course, that the discussion on the record was clear enough. And so with that in mind, oh man, was there, sorry, is there a recommended, it's all right. We'll just go ahead and, it's just for approval, right?
You could, something along the lines of, I move to approve the fiscal 23 audit report and financial statements with the changes noted on the record and grammatical edits or something, or however you want to do it, yeah.
I move ditto. I'd like to move the motion as just presented on the
Okay.
record.
All right.
No, I'll make the
Okay.
motion. This is Clay. I'll make the motion to approve the V&T Commission's fiscal year 2023 audit report and financial statements as presented by Casey Nealon Incorporated and as with the changes discussed on the record.
That was brilliantly said, Clay. Thank you for that motion. Do I have a second?
Michelle Schmitter, I second the motion.
Way to be, Michelle. We have a motion, a second. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. All right. Thank you, Suzanne. So we will get this baby out the door before December, or today, even better. Perfect, okay, yep. Awesome. All right. Thanks, everybody. Yeah, good discussion. Thank you. All right. Okay, with that, we'll move on to agenda item 9. For possible action, discussion and possible action regarding proposed amendment number 2 to contract number FY23-C002 with Virginia and Truckee Railroad, VTRR, increasing the consideration amount for the services described in amendment number 1 by $40,000 for an additional total not to exceed $100,000, and extending the term of the amendment number 1 from December 31st, 2023 through June 30, 2024. I don't know, Tom, if you want to say anything, you can. If you don't, it's pretty straightforward. So as we discussed when we put the original amendment, and I want to thank Tom and Candy and the whole team for stepping up because they have been handling a lot of things at the depot, whether it's, snow blowing, working on electrical or water, toilets, whatever, you name it, they've taken this on. And they've taken on the Polar Express side of things. So as we had previously discussed, if all of that was to come to fruition, our original amended amount of $60,000 would not be enough, basically, to get us, through this current fiscal year. So that's what this amendment really is. It just gets us, through this fiscal with some additional dollars to cover everything Polar related, but also everything that Tom and his team have been doing a wonderful job at the depot handling for us. So that's what this amendment is in a nutshell. And go ahead, please, Steph.
I just have one question, and thank you, Tom and Candy, for all that you're doing. I don't at all question the cost. My question has to do with, and I've thought about this in previous staff reports, and I keep forgetting to mention it, so here's the time. We have some elements on our staff report that talk about the funding source or explanation of where the money's coming from, and we never seem to fill those in. So that's really my question is, okay, we need an additional $40,000. Where is this coming out of? And maybe can we start including that in the staff report? And then that allows us to go back to that budget report and take a look at where our money is. That's my question.
I think the short answer to that question is yes. But we would be estimating, I think, if you're okay with that. And then, but you're not asking to augment the budget based on that for now, just have an idea of this
Right.
particular GL is, Polar, this, okay, is for the
Mhm.
repairs around the depot.
Yep.
Okay, yeah. I think, so can we work on that then, Sherry? Okay, so we'll just tie it back. Okay, yes. So I think we can do that. And we can talk to Mahela about that too. When you guys do that, do you put the specific GLs down? Is that what you're
We will
thinking?
usually put the
Okay.
account number and the
Okay.
account name. So, I mean, I'm assuming this is coming out of, well, wait, I need my glasses. I'm assuming that this is coming out of our operating but that's just what I want to clarify.
Okay. Yep. I think that's a good idea.
And,
Okay.
and
Yeah.
maybe we do it in kind of a non-committal way or a soft way where it is anticipated that this expense
Yeah.
will be charged against the following accounts or something like that.
Yep.
So at least it gives us a paper trail and a bit of guidance.
Yeah.
That's great.
So, and my question kind of dovetails on that, and it's just, is this an unbudgeted expense? What kind of impact are we looking at as far as augmentation potentially, or do we feel like we have within the categories that this may be charged to, do we have some leeway there to absorb it?
I think we're still okay because the number that I had in my head from going into the fiscal year on the atypical side, I think the amount that we had was like 117. I don't know, does that ring a bell, Stephanie? I feel like 115
Professional
or
services, is that what we're
117.
looking at?
Yeah,
It's 116,227 is what we budgeted for
yeah.
professional services.
So I still think we're okay. And in talking to Tom, I mean, I don't think we're going to get to the total as we may have budgeted because, again, I think we still have money in other buckets, right, that made up the overall budget. But that was, again, that was based on a different set of circumstances than where we're at now with the current vendors. But without trying to go back through it, like I wouldn't be 100%.
Sure.
Stake the.
Well, what I see there is we've already reflected about 32,000 against that account. I don't know where we stand. We have a separate GL for professional services PEX, and so there may be a portion that goes that.
There are, yeah. So
there.
exactly, Clay. You're right. So if Tom's doing anything that's specific to PEX on the AP, when we're approving those every second week, there are certain costs that are going against that because that amount on 53070-232, that's beyond the contract amount that we have with Carla by about 17-ish thousand. So yeah, certain things for Tom when they're doing something PEX specific, we are able to put those costs underneath that second professional services line item.
And then we have two other line items there for special event expenses PEX. I don't know what those specifically reference, but we've got nothing charged against them at this point. So
Yeah, that's a good. I don't remember what that is.
well, I thought when I first saw it, I thought maybe things like wine trains and that kind of stuff, but I don't know what special event PEX would be
Right.
then.
Yeah, I wonder if that's where like setting up the
North
depot
Pole.
in North Pole. I wonder if we have to break that out. That could very well be the case. Maybe that is for the construction folks, and then perhaps the Caledon or Celadon for the actual setup of the depot maybe goes underneath there. Which that would make sense. 40 plus 11. So that could be where those two go. But yeah, Clay, I mean, with 100% certainty to say that, does it take us over? I don't know without trying to break down these individual GLs. Plus, we're only talking about expenses through October at this point. A lot of the expenditures, we were paying them in the month of November, right, for Polar too, so they're not reflected in here yet, like,
Understood.
But
And that's why I think if we start filling in those fields, it will help us in the future. Generally, when we do ours for our board, for the city board of supervisors, we'll say, we anticipate it coming out of this fund. There's this remainder in this fund, and then that will leave a balance of whatever, or this may require an augmentation, or just so we know we're not
right.
spending what we don't have.
Yep. Yeah, and I should mention too, just for the record, that we did have late material on this item, which was the original charge service agreement with Tom, and then amendment number 1. So just want to make mention of that as well for the record. Are there any other questions that you guys have? Anybody want to make a motion on this item?
I will do so. I move to approve the Second Amendment to the VTRR contract as presented.
Thank you for that motion, Stephanie. Do I have a second?
This is Clay. I'll second that motion.
Thank you, Clay. So we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Great, motion carries unanimously. Again, Candy, Tom, team, thank you very much for taking all of this on, so really appreciate it. Okay, with that, we're going to move on to agenda item number 10. For possible action, discussion and possible action regarding a proposed installation of a memorial statue of the Grosh Brothers, the statue, quote, end quote, on property owned by the V&T Commission, and direction to staff to investigate the feasibility of the proposal and potential locations of the placement of the statue. So Bob Robert Thomason is going to make a presentation to us. Thank you for bearing with us through the audit, Bob. Really appreciate that. Yeah, please, yeah, and then just push the button and state your name for the record. And then Sherry, you'll bring up the presentation, so you can just have Sherry click through as you go, and you'll see it behind us on the TV here if we can get it to work.
First, I'd like to thank Sherry for the help. I bungled this initial submittal, and she's
Yeah,
a big
and
help.
it's okay, and there is revised late material, just for the record, it's at the back of the room, Todd, so you're happy with everything, just, yeah, because when you sent it, it was oriented one way,
Yeah, I
and
don't know
then
what happened,
we
yeah.
would have been, all looking like this at the TV, so, thank you, Bob, welcome.
My name is Bob Thomason, and I'm a retired mechanical engineer. And after retirement, I got interested in local history, which is a lot more interesting than being an engineer. And for the last, quite a while, 6 months or so, I've been involved in a project to get a memorial statue for the Grosh Brothers. And this photo here, that's taken in Philadelphia before they left. And I believe that's Alan on the left and Hosea's on his left. And these guys were really unique individuals. I mean, they were, next slide. Thanks. They came from, their father was a minister, a large family, no money, and they couldn't afford further education. So they bought books, studied on their own. They learned geology, metallurgy, ore processing, and they were way ahead of any of the other prospectors in the California gold country or Nevada. And they went to California first, and their goal was to get filthy rich so that they could send money, get their folks out, their siblings out to move to California. They came close, but they never made it. Every time they'd be so close, and then something would happen. So they heard stories of Utah territory in the easy money in what's now Nevada. So they moved to the Gold Canyon area, and same story all over again. They had heard about the silver. They didn't discover the silver. They had heard about it from some Hispanic prospectors. And so they weren't, I'm not sure, historians aren't convinced that they were the first to discover the Comstock lode. I personally think they were, but I'm not an official historian. But they were the first, there's no question that they were the first to go after the silver. Everyone else is looking for gold. And they were the first to actually pursue silver, and you couldn't just pan the silver like gold. They had to, it was chemically locked up in the minerals. And so they investigated different methods of recovering the silver. And even if they didn't make the initial discovery, I think their lives were significant. They made a major contribution to our history, and they deserve a statue, a memorial statue. So, next. Greg Melton, I think most of you may know Greg or who he is. He created the large statue of Adolf Sutro on the Capitol grounds, and his studio was at Sutro Tunnel area. And this is his conceptual sketch. And this is done 20-something years ago. This is how long this project has been barely not moving. It'll be 1.25 life-size. Sculptors are convinced that a life-size statue just doesn't come across. So they want statues to be a little larger than life to give it the full dramatic effect. And it'll be maybe 11 feet tall, about 8 feet in diameter. that basin, this is a conceptual sketch. It'll be different. It'll have a couple of plaques on it. Base will be smaller. A couple of plaques acknowledging organizations that contribute and also history of the Grosh brothers' lives. So, thanks. Yeah, yes. Graham Ross, he used to own the Golden Gate Saloon in Silver City, and he was a huge fan of the Grosh brothers, and he was actually writing a book, and then he passed away. And I don't know what happened to this manuscript. I'm trying to talk to this family, but Greg and Graham got this idea of creating this statue 20-something years ago, and Greg has never really given up, but Agent Orange got to him, which is really, really tragic. And to some extent, I think Greg's life almost parallels the Grosh brothers, because things were going great, and then tragedy that was out of their control. So to some extent, I think this statue is going to be a tribute to Greg Milton in addition to the Grosh brothers. And since Greg can't sculpt, we've identified several qualified sculptors who are interested in the project. So that's not going to be a problem. And location, we can't really start raising money. People ask, well, why should I give you the money? Where's this going to go? So, and I think we started at Silver City by Donovan's Mill, and we checked out all the wide spaces in the highway, all the way up through Silver City, Gold Hill, over the divide through Virginia City, and to the gas station there where Geiger grade begins. And we've kind of come to the conclusion that the commission property there adjacent to the Gold Hill Depot is pretty much ideal. So, next. And this orange area here is your property. And that blue rectangle is roughly the depot location. Then it's a highway just above the properties. And the statue, I could go almost anywhere in the orange area, but I think if you decide to pursue this or investigate it further, the decision makers need to go out there and drive a stake in the ground where it might be the best spot. And the land isn't flat. It's got a little dip in it. And I don't think there's any other right-of-ways through there. But anyway, yeah, we'd have to go out there and really walk it down and take a detailed look at it from different perspectives. So, next. And this is a Google Earth view. That blue circle is roughly where I thought might be a good location for it. But again, that's just very conceptual. That's not even a recommendation. It's just to show the aerial view of the area. Next. And what I think are the advantages, benefits from this location, it's both Gold Hill and Silver City, I think, are kind of stepchilds to Virginia City. So this would be a tremendous focal point for the Gold Hill community. And the Gold Hill Depot, after all the work that went into restoring it, and now it doesn't get used for much that I see. So it could bring new attention to the Gold Hill Depot. And I think for V&T tourists and for V&T passengers, it'd be a great attraction there right at the depot. So, next. And thank you. Installation, I don't think it's going to be much of a disruption at all to the neighborhood there. It'd take, roughly a week. It'd have to be graded, some excavation done for the foundation, and it'll require hardly any maintenance. Hose it down once or twice a year, wash it, and we'll landscape it, kind of xeriscape it, which won't require maintenance. And any maintenance, I think we can commandeer the clampers to come out twice every few months or so and weed and clean it, take care of the area. So, and our organization, we're still working on the details, but Silver City Cemetery has Hosea Grosh's grave, and the Comstock Cemetery Foundation is offered to help us with their 501c3 umbrella, which is that was a huge milestone to get that. It was big. Yeah. So, and our goal, working with you, if you do decide to investigate further, is our long-term goal is to minimize any additional work for the commission, where we would take on almost everything we can without this becoming a burden to you. So fundraising, we have a program. We haven't started yet because we don't have a location, but we have some people helping us, and we give it some thought. And some deep pockets have expressed an interest, but they haven't written any checks yet. So, and again, it's all waiting on a location. So, and next. So that's it. I'm just hoping that this is enough information to where you can decide to investigate, pursue it further. I know it.
No, I thank you for
Yeah.
bringing this forward to us. It falls in line. I'll just say I'm in the midst of something with a cultural corridor right now at my day job with Virginia City. We've got Silver
Sure,
City
yeah.
a part of that, and
Yeah.
Douglas County as well. So this is actually a pretty cool
Yeah.
component, in terms of what we're looking at from a cultural
Sure,
corridor.
yeah.
People traveling, from Douglas through
Yeah.
Carson City up to Virginia City. So it falls in line very nicely. Could I just ask a couple of questions? Sherry, will you go back to the page where you had the map?
Yeah.
Not the squares, but with the circle. Because my recollection is, so I know we've got some right of way, as you said, we've got property, but then I'm trying to think Story County play, right? Comstock, Tom, don't the four of us sort of converge in some way, shape, or form as our track ends? Right, yeah.
So my understanding is the property records are fairly clear in the area. There certainly are underlying mining claims.
Okay.
And under the mining law of 1872, they take precedence. If they could use eminent domain to take surface rights if that was something that they wanted to do. It's
Okay.
not done very often, not anticipated, but certainly something. But as far as the property rights there, and if we actually go back to the squares, I think it's pretty clear. Certainly the neighboring parcels around there are owned by a variety of different people,
Okay.
but I'm quite sure that parcel is clearly the title's in our name.
Okay, good.
And I don't think there's any question about that. Where the actual lot corners are,
We just have
it's all a little
yeah.
approximate. but,
Sure.
um,
Okay.
But as the plot map showed, it fronts on the highway. It's not set back. It's the first row, if you will.
Okay.
And I think this is a fairly good approximation of where exactly that lot is.
Okay. Please, yeah, go ahead.
My
Lisa.
only comment would be that if this does move forward, I actually manage Gold Hill Depot in terms of renting it out for events, things like that.
Uh-huh.
We would just need to know ahead of time if we do have a wedding or something that wanted to be there, if it was happening. So that's my only comment.
Okay, good. Yeah, go ahead, Michelle. And then Stephanie, you had something? Yeah, so
I
Michelle, then Steph. Yeah.
Have a question, because this is all within the Comstock National Register Landmark District. Have you gone before their board? And I know, Clay, you've been on that board.
The Comstock Historic District.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Have
Yeah.
you gone before their board?
I haven't, not officially, but unofficially. They're all for it. as far as-
Yeah, so there's a staff member who's a historian who is charged with helping the public kind of get ready and prepare and know what they need to do to. So for a project like this, it would need a certificate of appropriateness from
Yeah.
that commission.
Yeah.
But it would have to, what would need to be presented would need to be more specific. And so
Oh,
the
yeah.
point in the sequence where that would happen would be somewhere before you go to the county to get building permits if they're needed, but you'd need to get beyond the conceptual phase and have a very specific, here's where it's going to be, because part of what that commission considers is how it fits into the surroundings to make sure that it's appropriate from that perspective.
Well,
Clay-
it's the
Clay-
visual impact to the depot, so I'm sure they would want to look at it.
For sure.
Yeah, Clay explained it really well. We have general approval, enthusiasm, actually. But as far as, getting that certificate of appropriateness, we need a specific location, specific, it's got to be specific. And we're not specific yet. But we do have their general conceptual approval. So,
Go ahead, Stephanie.
I think you answered some of the questions, and this would be part of the investigation and what we would need to do. But I guess I want to make sure that there's not a lot of staff time spent on it, because I don't know that it all falls under our purview, as far as the Railway Commission. But I think it's probably important, perhaps to get a title report, just to check underlying utilities or anything like that that we may be up against on the site to ensure the right location. And unless those records that you were talking about, Clay, might show that. And then I would recommend, Sherry, for you, the city we've created an art policy, because some of the things that come up when we work with artists, like who's actually going to be the owner of the statue, is, does it remain in your possession, but it's on our property? Is
Yes.
it, or does the commission become the owner of it? Those are things that need to be kind of outlined and delineated in an agreement. I think the maintenance is really important. If the idea is that, that they're, whatever minimum maintenance there is will be taken care of.
sure.
We want to outline all of those things in the agreement, just so that it's really well understood. And then on the landscaping, you said xeriscape, so I'm assuming then there's no irrigation needs there for that? Okay. And I think, again, those are the sorts of things we just kind of need to look at as we work through. This would just be investigation, but when it comes back, I would expect that we'd want some sort of agreement so that we identify roles and responsibilities.
Actual ownership of the statue, from your perspective, it seems like it'd be simpler if the cemetery foundation actually owned the statue. It's something to,
And I honestly don't have a preference. I just think it has to be determined, so
defined.
we
Oh,
all,
sure.
we all know at the end, when we're long gone
Yeah.
and somebody else,
yeah.
wants to know that answer, it's in a document somewhere, so.
And another question is insurance requirements, what additional, if any?
I mean, I think there certainly would be during construction, and then depending on, again, because sometimes the artist maintains ownership of the actual statue, and it wouldn't even be the nonprofit or the commission.
Yeah.
And so they may want it insured
Yeah.
against damages and stuff like that. The other thing that we've talked about in some of our agreements is, let's just say something happens to it beyond repair, then, is the commission responsible for creating a new sculpture, or is that the end of the agreement? And again, those are
Yeah, it
just,
needs to be defined,
those are
yeah.
things to identify so that
Yeah.
we know.
So should we come up with a draft agreement and submit that to you for review and comment?
I think that would be great. I can get to Sherry, the city's art policy, which I think has some of those things and language in it that might just help you guys as far as a guideline as to what to include.
Stephanie, could I ask Clay, do you guys have a public art policy for Story County? That would,
Doubtful.
oh, okay. I mean, I wasn't sure because I thought we could share what we have here for
Sure.
Carson City, which is very exhaustive. But I thought if there was something already in place, you guys probably, I mean, I know it's state property, but it's still in
Yeah.
Story but
Yeah, well, and if I can back up just a step, I see this as kind of a two-phase thing, and Bob and I discussed a little bit, and I said, I think the right approach is to approach the commission conceptually, see if there's interest, see if there's support for then looking into the specifics to then be brought back to make an actual decision to move forward. I don't see that second step as being the finality. I see that as now we're going to prepare the contract and figure out all the fine points to it. But I think even before we look at a lot of those details, we need to figure out, and this is more a legal question than an administrative question, and that is, what type of legal structure is it? Is it an easement of some kind? Is it actually dedicating a portion of the lot? What, what does that look like, right? And so I think that's a very fundamental thing. And my suggestion was to bring the concept so that we could at least kind of direct staff and then start that process. No expectation that anything would really be done or concrete, but just say, hey, let's explore this and bring it back so that then we can look at it and go, well, here are the pros and cons of if we do an easement, here are the pros and cons of $1 a year lease, here are the, and kind of the different ways that that could be structured, big picture, and then probably 2 more steps to get, okay, here's a proposal for how it would be structured, who'd be responsible for what. And then if we approve that, then we'd actually have to negotiate a contract and finalize it. Look at us, so bureaucratic.
I don't like it. What's the matter? As you get these city county people. No. Yeah, I like that 2-phased approach as well. But you're right. If we're going to come back in January, we'd have a couple of months, I think, to kind of work this out. I too would like to. I'm a visual person, so I think to be up there and maybe, Bob, coordinate something where we could actually see where you're thinking about placing this would be helpful. I get, that we think we're okay with the titling of the property and everything, but I'd just like to see, to your point, what does the view look like as you're driving up, and then if you're, on the train, are we blocking the depot or whatever,
I guess we could make a big plywood cutout.
Yeah. 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 And then I just have a couple of other observations. I love your idea with the medallions. Were you thinking potentially using Queen Press #1 at the State Museum? Yeah. So, geez, that's just lovely. Love that very much. I know our DMH board member probably loves it even more than I love it. My question is with the artists, I know you've identified some different artists. So are you going to put like a request for sculptor or a request for artist out then and have people respond? They might, I don't know if you're asking them to create maquettes or concepts, on paper or computer generated, but is that kind of your process is to solicit, do like a request for artists? Okay.
Right. Yeah.
Okay.
And I
Right.
think that Nevada Arts Council is going to help us.
Oh, well, perfect.
With
Okay.
that.
That answers my
I mean,
next
a lot,
question.
if we're buying pumps or something, I know how to evaluate it.
Sure. Okay. Yeah, no, which I think is really good, right?
Yeah.
Because then you can get a robust set of different artists from wherever,
Yeah.
It'd be nice to have a Nevada artist if possible, but,
Yeah, still looking for a Nevada artist.
okay.
Down Utah, Idaho,
Yeah.
and California, but so
Well,
far.
we just hired a new arts and culture program manager who lives in this world or has lived in this world, so I'd be happy to connect you with
Oh,
Eric
that'd
on
be
our
great.
team,
Yeah.
and he might have some thoughts and ideas
Because it would be
too.
super to have a Nevada
Yeah.
artist.
At least get them to respond if you're going to do a solicitation. I think that would be great. Okay, yeah, lovely. Any other questions for Bob? Yeah.
No,
go ahead, Clay.
I just have a comment. One of the reasons I think this is a really interesting idea to explore is that even though it's generally acknowledged that the Grosch brothers' initial work on the Comstock lode was further south, closer to Silver City, the original discovery of the lode structure was in Gold Hill, just behind where the depot is. Now it's all gone. It was an open pit mine in the late 70s.
Mhm.
But again, it's a little bit of a Rodney Dangerfield situation, right? Gold Hill can't get no respect, right? because it was a full 6 months later that the discovery in Virginia City was made, and at the time they didn't know they were connected. And so to me, there's some historical accuracy in the fact that even though the Grosch brothers didn't really get the credit for the discovery, and maybe they were working on a different part of the lode or exploring a different part of the lode, there is historical significance to this area right here that ties in. And I think there's some value to exploring it from that perspective. So the other thing that is on my mind is while it's great for us to have input, I think we want to really consider how much input we want, because often there's responsibility that comes along with that. And is our involvement potentially simply providing the land in whatever structures, or do we want some measure of control over what ends up being there and to what extent, right? And so that's something to think about as potentially something comes back to us to say, how involved do we want to be in a check and balance system over what ends up being there? Or do we just simply say, that's not really our purview? You know, we're generally supportive of the project and we provide the place for it, but that's really as far as we go. And just make sure that there are other checks and balances in place that, you know, we know the historic district and the other things are also gonna sign off on it. So.
Excellent point. I was wondering the same thing. Would somebody on the commission potentially be on the evaluation panel of those artists, just to, you know, have some level of responsibility in terms of what the artist is and what the rendering ultimately looks like? Yeah, that's a good, but not for today, right? That's what we've got to figure out long term. So, okay. Yeah, I think that's very fair. So, yeah, I really like this.
All right.
So I mean, I'm just speaking for myself, but this is pretty cool, and appreciate you even thinking of the VNT Railway
Oh,
Commission.
thank
So,
you.
Yeah, awesome. Are there any other comments or questions for Bob? No. Does anybody want to do a motion then to kind of push us along in this process? Yes. No.
I'll submit a motion.
Come on up here. Here you go. I'm going to hand this to you.
Yeah, I'm happy to make a
Okay.
motion. This is Clay. I move to instruct staff and our contractors to investigate the feasibility of placement of an art installation honoring the Gross Brothers on our property in Gold Hill.
Excellent.
And to bring back some recommendations at a subsequent meeting.
Perfect. Okay. Thank you for that motion, Clay. Do you have a second?
Michelle Schmitter, I second the motion.
All right. We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. All right.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Yeah, no, this is great. We're off and running.
And
So-
can someone send me an action item list, things that I can do or we should do from our side right out the bat?
Sherry, I think, based on kind of what we talked about, let's have you guys
Yeah.
keep the conversation going. I think that would be great, yeah.
All right.
So
Thank
that way
you
you don't
very
get
much.
piecemeal stuff from any of us. So thank you. Yeah,
really
thank you, sir.
appreciate-
Yeah, it's nice to meet you. Thank you. Thank you.
Appreciate your group here.
All right. With that, we'll move on to agenda item 11. These are our monthly non-action items for discussion only. So I'll handle 11A1, the status of the escrow number 02303122 related to a certain property with APN 008-522-15 located at 3581 Draco Way in Carson City. Boy, we finally got this one over the finish line. So again, as was mentioned earlier, on the 13th of November, we did receive the final payment that included all of the interest and the penalties and everything that continued to accrue even past the 1st of November. So we're done, as far as I'm aware, with that. So I did leave a message with Mr. Greer, who was the commercial, loan agent or whatever you would refer to his title, letting him know that the funds were received and now they can, I believe, do what it is they need to do on the property because it's there. So happy to say that that is out of the way, and hopefully for the January meeting, we'll see that revenue reflected right in the budget. So any questions on 11A1? Okay, I'll briefly address 11A2. So this is possible engagement with state of Nevada agencies, common goals and objectives regarding the long-term viability and sustainability of the VNT Commission. So I was asked by the director of the Department of Tourism and Cultural Affairs to hold off until they actually replace Dan Thielen, who was the Railroad Museum director in Carson City. So now he's the administrator. Brenda would like for the staff, they're down 3, I think, Michelle, there at the Railroad Museum, including the director of the museum. So she's asked if we could just be patient and wait until they have the staff fully up and running and then to re-engage. But again, nobody has said, no, we don't like this idea, don't like the concept, but they just want to have the new Railroad Museum director on board with us and be a part of the conversation. So for now, this will probably be my last update until such time as they get the staff in place, especially the museum director. So any questions on this one? Okay, let's move on to 11B. Well, that's the Polar Express, and Carla is not here. I don't know, Sherry, I think it's going along quite well. As you guys know, we sold out. I've heard nothing but great positive comments. So, Candy, I don't know if you want to say anything on the PEX front at all, but I think it's going along well. So, it is. Okay, cool. All right. We'll move on to 11C, and we'll just take C and D, operations report, and then train operations report together. Tom, do you want to say anything on that front, or Candy? Sorry, either one of you. His name's on the door. Yeah, I see how that is.
Tom Gray, Virginia Truckee Railroad, for the record. Operations report, we're running a lot in Virginia City, of course, still. The 29's down, and then we're finally constructing that building, doing lots of track work right now. Let's see, I'm a track coordinator for the commission. They're supposed to do a track inspection today, but they haven't called back. So that's been a little bit of a weak area right now. I think it's in transition.
Yeah.
The tunnel and bridge culvert inspections haven't happened yet. They keep getting postponed, but we haven't had the weather yet. We need to do something about it. There's no pre-emergent put out yet. That's a big deal, I think. That's the biggest thing. We'll lubricate the track this evening in Carson City, and then do an inspection also. Parking lot coordinator, there's still a pretty good-sized pothole in the road about halfway in the entrance road. It's one of the utilities that hasn't been raised up. It's about 1 foot in diameter, but it's a wheel breaker that's out there. It's about 100 feet this side of the fire hydrant. It should be addressed.
Is that when you're coming in to the? I hit that.
It's on the right, yeah.
Okay. I just thought I wasn't sure what that was. So that's like a
Yeah,
manhole cover or something in the. Okay.
yeah.
Ground.
I
All
think
right.
they usually raise those up, and then so it should be addressed. I haven't actually stopped and looked at it, but I did order a solar light for the entrance to help people to turn off, identify that entrance.
Right.
Granite supplied 2 light boards on the highway, and we got the permits for those. They couldn't supply the light plants this year, so we have 5 light plants on rental from the local rental company.
Okay.
Parking's a huge problem down there. I cleaned all the dumpsters out of the way and made that a lot easier, but I'll give you an example of so we paid a gentleman, Tobin, out there to, be out there. He sits in his car and he's got a light plant, and there's a stop sign there. A lot of people just buzz right by him, but there's no place for them to park on the second train. And so one enlightening comment he told me this last week was he had a really upset 65-year-old woman kind of talking with them like they do. And said, I just paid $30 for 3 cars to park here, and I can't even get in the parking lot. I have to park in this field,
Oh, wow.
and they got to park down. And she's pretty upset. So there might be an easier way to do that, in an organization, the most important person is the first person you meet, the first person answering the phone, the first person saying, hello, how can I help you? So, that's what I see, that parking person, not as a parking person, but as a greeter, hey, welcome to Polar Express,
Right.
oh, you drove in from Sacramento, how was your trip,
Yeah.
and then where to park, because a lot of people will go past them, there's no place to park in the main parking circle.
Okay.
Now with the 4th car, that's an extra 4,000 riders, extra 1,000 cars plus, that's, how many cars extra a night, 15 to 20 cars a trip
Right,
night that there's no
right.
place for, or there's a
Yeah.
place for, but they got to park. We used to have a shuttle a long time ago, electric golf cart. It's kind of a courtesy thing. We go greet people and bring them in. I think Dwight supplied those from his golf course, and it was kind of a neat thing because it is dangerous. And then the way the parking lot's laid out now, you can't get around the last cars on the return side. That trucks actually, take the lane up.
Okay.
So it's not practical. The one thing that we do is I insist that all the employees that I have control over don't park for where customers park, you know.
Right.
We have a Santa parking in this, you know, I mean, somebody else has a Santa parking in the first handicap spot, and a couple other people, but I make all of our people park out of there. And then we used to park on the airport runway. That was an easy place to park. We'd have 20 cars down there, but now they're parking on the, you know, past those containers in that secondary parking lot. So it's I mean, it
Tom, can I ask you a question about when you cross over the tracks by the connexes? Is that where the staff are parking? Or,
Yes.
okay, and then like, because I saw when I came up, the parents of the kids, it seemed like if they were either parking over in there, or if they were older, I guess they park their cars, but they're sort of parking in a weird way too, to where they're not really, they're not maximizing the space by any stretch of the imagination, right? Because it's almost like everybody's kind of in parallel with one another, but then you only can only get like 5 cars on the backside of that lot, instead of if everybody just kind of went in like normal side by side spaces, you could fit a lot more people. So I don't know what to do out there because it's just dirt, you know. I
Grinding,
don't know how to
yeah.
line it or anything like that.
it's just one of the extra places to park, you know, or that
Yeah.
are down the hill. So it is a problem.
Okay.
The airport got rid of a lot, but it's hard to park there now. The Santa's always parked down there. There's always 3 or 4. I park down there most of the time, but so at any rate, the elves, the young elves are doing great group of kids this year. They're enthusiastic and really proud of them. Gift shop stuff, you know, the order was about 6 tons of merchandise came in. You know, half of that was mugs, which was 6,000 pounds of mugs. And but we're out of dumpster space, so it gets to be a challenge. Okay, it's, you know, we get the soft stuff in there, but there's a lot of cardboard and there's a lot of stuff. And what else is there? Oh, when it rains, the lights go out, so a lot of things to fix. Yeah, it's a little tough sometimes, but we're whittling away all the you know, maintenance honeydews down there. Back door doesn't work anymore, but
Oh, geez.
but the hot chocolate room, we didn't do all the work we had planned, but we got the water inside now, so it's not temporary rigged and it flows twice as fast, so it really helps them produce that hot chocolate. That's one of the major delays of the trains. You know, we can't get the hot chocolates in. And then the only really complaints we have are, you know, people show up late, they can't sit together with their families, you know, and they get pretty darn upset. But, you know, yeah. I think the only decorations we don't have, I could not find that big, huge banner that was on the front of the building before. I've looked for it. And I don't have any like white lights around the perimeter where that container was. I need to put those up, and then otherwise I think it's okay.
I thought it looked great. That's, yeah, I don't know where, the one that was on the Connex before.
Yeah.
In front for.
Maybe it's still on the
Fuller.
Connex.
I wonder if it's in, yeah. Okay.
I can't find it.
Okay, yeah. No, good work, and thank you for moving the dumpsters around, and I would just say, I thought what we did with the striping, moving, there was still the right thing to get the Connex and get it out of the way to at least help a little bit and provide some spaces and
Well,
everything.
it's going to be critical when it snows. We can get 7 people, even though it's not striped, we can get, you know, 6 or
Yeah.
7 people up there, you know,
Right.
and we can't clean that parking lot. You know, we do make an attempt, is all we can do.
Right.
Oh, the other thing on the billing, when you were talking, I should itemize it differently for you, because when I bill for the regular season, you know, like the last one was all the Polar ticket sales. So if you need to break that out as a budgetary item, it'd be better. It'd be nice if I could maybe more maintenance or repair items, do a better job for you, so it could go in a better bucket. Or
Perfect.
more
And I did
identifiable
see,
bucket.
because I think the one, it did have the Polar on it, the one that we just did, so I think we have that correctly, only because you had PEX on it, which was great, because then we know which bucket to put it in. But yeah, anything you're able to do on your end, if you don't mind, that would
I
be
think
super
there's quite a
helpful.
bit of savings too, you know, I mean,
Yeah, Yeah, I still, I mean, I think we're going to be okay by the time we get to the end of the fiscal. It's weird how we have to move things into different buckets, right? Or apportion out parts of invoices to other GLs, but we're, doing the best that we can to try and keep things in a line with how the budget was created. So, but it's just, yeah, a bunch of different buckets, right? That the dollars kind of get popped into, so.
budgeted buckets.
Yeah.
And then we should get that pre-emergent. Somebody can put it out.
Yeah, I was going to, I thought we had it, right? Because we've already paid.
Yeah.
So I don't know, you have to forgive me, Tom, because I don't remember, do they deliver that does it all go to the depot, or is it half up top, half at the bottom? I don't remember how they were doing
No,
that
they
for
pick
Gabe
it
in the
all up.
past.
Yeah, because I was told by Gabe that as soon as
Yep.
they got that deposit check was.
Yeah, that they had delivered it. And we did do it 2 weeks.
Right away. I didn't have to do anything else, so I will reach out to Gabe and.
Yeah, because you're right, we did pay two plus weeks ago for it.
Oh, okay.
So
So it's been scheduled then.
yeah,
I'll double check.
will you
He said he
double?
was going to.
Yeah. I just figured that was a question of Gabe tells them exactly where to dump everything off at. I mean that in a nice way, but place, however much of the chemicals or whatever we're using. But yeah, I thought that was taken care of.
It was.
So,
I'll make a note to call Gabe
Okay.
this afternoon.
yeah. The only other thing, Tom, I was just thinking out loud, the gentleman from Wood Rogers on the bridge inspection, were you guys able to just touch base? Did he contact you to say, hey, we're going to try to set something up while we're running Polar, since he needs to see the train go over the bridge?
Yeah, I talked to Dennis and I
Okay.
said, wasn't just come at about 5 o'clock and watch it go over there.
Perfect.
Rather
Okay.
than run a special train, but
Yeah.
they didn't show up this week. I think there was
Okay.
some personal problems and,
Okay.
as they ask me for track time, then I can see what's going on out there,
Perfect.
and remind them to
Okay.
do it.
Yeah. Yeah, because I agree. It shouldn't matter what day of the week, as long as there's a train going over.
Yeah.
They should be able to do the inspection accordingly. So,
It's
okay.
easier in the daytime,
Yeah,
but
you can
I mean,
see. Mhm.
we're not,
Okay. No, that sounds good. Thank you.
question?
Go ahead, Michelle.
So it sounds like the parking is a challenge. So any solutions, or do we need to reach out and try to get a golf cart again? Or rent one?
Well, it's just the design of it.
I-
I mean,
I parked over in that other lot. I'm wondering if there's a way to reposition lighting, because I think that alone would make it feel a little more planned as opposed to just extra, to illuminate it a little bit. I don't know if that's possible, or what the cost would be for another lighting tree, or what it would take. But it seems like just that would make it just feel like it's part of the plan as opposed to an afterthought.
And Clay, are you talking about over by the connexes in the dirt across the tracks?
Mhm.
Could we get a light? I guess we'd have to tow it in there, probably.
we ordered 5 light plants this year. I think I ordered one more than last year, and we can put a 6th one out there, but
Yeah, to encourage people to go over
I just,
there.
so I know when we were walking from it and back to it, uneven ground, cars parked block the light that kind of floods over from, yeah, and so they're just far enough, and the kind of the orientation was such that it was pretty dark, and it's not, I mean, everyone has cell phones with a light on them. It's not the end of the world. It's not like they're completely in the dark, but I feel like just from a perception perspective, like from the perception would be that it would feel more like, here's what your $10 went to.
I mean, yeah, it'd be nice maybe to just add an extra $1 to the ticket and not collect for it, because it costs so much to collect for it. And,
Sure.
and,
Right, right.
We still have 8 pounds of cars getting in a 4-pound box,
Yeah, bursting at the seams. That's an interesting thought process moving forward, is just adjust the ticket, remove the parking component as a secondary. So
Ye-
I like that.
Nice having a
Yeah.
greeter.
And also some messaging through the ticket purchase process about parking's limited, carpool as much as you can, be efficient with, you know what I mean? Just a little bit of messaging to try to help people realize that, you know, the more efficient they can be, the better experience is gonna be.
The middle train's a tough one to park at.
Yeah,
Because actually, after the second train goes, the parking lot's empty.
yeah.
And then
Right.
the 8 o'clock people. have it,
Yeah.
you
Zoom
know.
right in.
It's,
Yeah.
it's that one.
Maybe we could reevaluate too the relationship we had, I think, 2 seasons ago with Gold Dust West as well, where we did have the shuttle running. But I feel like we were doing that for all 3 trains. Maybe we just need to figure out doing it for the middle train perhaps, or something like that to help alleviate. I don't know that we can affect change now, but for next year, we could engage Mike, you know, who's my board chair for Visit Carson City, but talk to him about would he be open to looking at being a staging for a shuttle that would transport people back and forth, you know, to help
You
as
can
well.
still make the parking lot wider, you know, it's an easy way to get 20 more cars
Sure.
easy in there.
Yeah,
Plus the road down to the runway.
right.
There's a lot of room there.
So are people parking next to the RC field right now? Are they just splitting off and then as you know, like you take the left to come in for us and you take the right to go to the RC
No.
park? No, okay, so nobody's parking over there. Okay.
Yeah.
Because are they allowed to do that, Stephanie, or not? No, or,
I know we had talked about it at one point. If you remember, there was that one special event that was being contemplated for out at the depot, and they were going to need extra parking. And the problem is that you know, the pavement section that's used for the actual airplanes is not in good shape currently, and so they did not want vehicles on it.
this sounds like something for the treasurer to figure out, you know, under her enhanced operational responsibilities with Sherry. But,
Leah's on it.
Just saying what Leah was thinking. No, thank you, Tom. I really appreciate it. The manhole issue, I don't know, is that something we need to talk to SNC about? And not exactly sure how that, I know what you're saying, they could add a column or something to raise.
Yeah, I'm not sure either, but we could certainly reach out to Ken and SNC and find out. I did go out there and take a look at the parking lot finally. And I think, I mean, as far as the rest of the surface, I feel like they did a really nice job. And I don't know if people are utilizing that parallel parking that's on the roadway, but that's nice and striped as well. Yeah, it's a hike up the hill in, but those spaces now are designated there along the roadway in as well. So, but we could check with Ken and find out.
Yeah, yeah, let's do that. And it's just that one that I remember only because I did hit it because there was a car coming the other way. So, okay. Thank you, Tom. Yeah, thanks you guys for everything out there. All right. With that, we will move on to 11E. Is our next meeting right here in this building at 9 o'clock in the morning, January 24th. Yeah, get that on your calendars, everybody. Yeah, you might. It's a new year. I have faith in you. 8:55, you'll be here, Michelle. I got $20 on that. All right, let's move on to agenda item 12, commissioner comments or announcements and requests for information. Does anybody have anything they want to throw out?
I have just one comment for the information of the commission. There was a public comment made. So the Carson City's RTC is examining some or investigating some different ways to get some more funding for street maintenance, and so there was kind of a workshop-ish item on their last agenda. And there was a public comment that was made that referenced some of our financials, and in my opinion, kind of mischaracterized the financial performance of the commission. It was submitted as a letter, and it's certainly in the agenda packet. You can go look at it if you want. I was tempted to come and make public comment, and I think I will at the next meeting, not in any way representing the commission, but just as in my individual capacity, and provide a little bit of clarification, specifically the conclusion that was drawn was that we were losing $600,000 or $800,000 a year, and that money would be better spent on roads. And so I thought it may be valuable to just appear as a commissioner and say, I'm not speaking for the commission. I just want to clarify a little bit about the money side of things, and point out that what they're referencing as a loss is really the depreciation, which is not cash that's being lost, and just provide a little bit of clarification there. It was not, it was peripheral to the main issue that was being discussed, and so it wasn't like, it wasn't an emergency, but I think there's some value in, number one, just having a bit of visibility, but also correcting the record a little bit along those lines. So anyway, I just thought I'd let the commission know that that's kind of my plan, is to show up at their next meeting under public comment and just provide a little bit of information and clarity as far as our operations and what's happening there. So.
Super idea, because we're also a state commission, not a privately run enterprise either, or a private business, so.
Correct. And there was a little bit of a, confusion about that and how the structure is, and then also the funding sources and what's committed, what's not committed, and so on and so forth. So.
Okay. Yeah, any other comments? If you want to, go for it. Yeah, go. Yeah, I've talked enough.
All right, well, correct me if I misspeak, but again, want to thank SNC and Ken Dorr for their assistance on getting the parking lot repaved and the road overlaid. I know Ken wanted to let us know and advise the commission that the cutting down of the brush along the sides of the roadways didn't get accomplished during the rest of the project, but SNC is still going to come out on their own schedule and do that for us, just to help prevent any issues when and if snow gets here from confining our roadway. So he wanted us to let the commission know that, and again, thank them for all their help on that project.
Great, yeah, great. All right, the only thing I just want to throw out there, I had a super conversation with Tom before we started PEX there on the media partner night, just confirming with the second annual Mark Twain Days Festival that will take place on the Memorial Day weekend. So we're not going to try to pull something off in April, but we would like to do that over the Memorial Day weekend, which I think will help since we're already running the trains on Saturday and Sunday. And then our event would be that Friday night. So, and I plan on talking to you, but so we had to do a lot of evaluation of events internally and with our own sort of steering committee to assess what was taking place in April and May, and this is where we landed. But Tom's all for it. I think it's going to be great. He's offered the fourth car, which will be awesome because we turned a lot of people away for our event because we were limited, I think, to 100. I think we only sold 180 or 186 tickets or whatever, because we needed comps for some of the sponsors and whatnot and other folks. But I just wanted to make mention of that. So thank you, Tom, there again, and looking forward to a super cool second annual. So, okay. Are there any other comments or anything anybody wants to make? Okay. Thank you, everybody. 13, public comment. Anybody want to make a public comment at this time? Okay, I don't see any. Could I get a motion to adjourn? Anybody?
I move to adjourn.
We are adjourned. Thank you, Stephanie.